Willis Augustus Lee. The whole story, narrated straight from Wikipedia, start to finish. Let's dive in. Willis Augustus Ching Lee Jr., May 11, 1888, August 25, 1945, was a Vice Admiral of the United States Navy during World War II. Lee commanded the American ships during the second night of the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, November 14–15, 1942, and turned back a Japanese invasion force headed for the island. The victory ended Japanese attempts to reinforce their troops on Guadalcanal, and thus marked a turning point in both the Guadalcanal campaign and the Pacific War. Lee was also a skilled sport shooter and won 7 medals in the 1920 Olympics shooting events, including 5 gold medals, tied with teammate Lloyd Spooner for the most anyone had ever received at a single Olympic Games. Their record stood for 60 years. He was the most successful athlete at the 1920 Olympics. Early life. The son of Judge Willis Augustus Lee and Susan Arnold, he was known as Mose Lee to family and friends. He entered the U.S. Naval Academy in 1904. While at the Naval Academy, his Chinese-sounding last name, compounded by his fondness for the Far East, earned him the moniker Ching Lee. Among his classmates were several future admirals, including Harry A. Batt, Paul H. Bastido, John R. Beardall, Abel T. Bidwell, Joseph J. Broshek, Arthur S. Carpenter, Jules James, Walter K. Kilpatrick, James L. Kaufman, Thomas C. Kincaid, William R. Monroe, William R. Purnell, Francis W. Rockwell, John F. Shafroth Jr., and Richmond K. Turner. Following graduation, Lee joined the Academy's rifle team 3 times. First, during his final summer training stint on the USS Nevada, he was called back to Annapolis to participate on the rifle team. He was assigned to the battleship Idaho from October 1908 to May 1909, before returning to the Naval Academy and rejoining the rifle team. From November 1909 until May 1910, Lee served aboard the protected cruiser New Orleans and then transferred to the gunboat Helena. Upon being detached back to the United States, Lee rejoined the Academy shooting team a 3rd time. In July 1913, Lee rejoined Idaho, and in April 1914, he transferred to the battleship New Hampshire to participate in the occupation of Veracruz. During World War I, Lee served on the destroyers O'Brien and Lee. 1920 Olympics. Lee participated in 14 events at the 1920 Summer Olympics in Antwerp. He won 7 medals, 5 gold, 1 silver, and 1 bronze, all in team events. His teammates for the various events were Dennis Fenton, Lawrence Newsline, Arthur Rothrock, Oliver Shriver, Morris Fisher, Carl Osborne, Lloyd Spooner, and Joseph Jackson. Lee and Spooner ended the 1920 Olympics with 7 medals each, the most anyone had ever received in a single year's games. Boris Shacklin was the next person to reach 7 in 1960. It would not be until Alexander Dityatin in the 1980 Games that anyone would beat the record. Interwar years. Lee attended the Naval War College in the late 1920s and was promoted to the rank of captain in 1936. During the 1930s and early 1940s, Lee was several times assigned to the Fleet Training Division, commanded the light cruiser Concord, and served on the staff of Commander Cruiser's Battle Force. In early 1942, following his promotion to the rank of Rear Admiral, Lee became Assistant Chief of Staff to the Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Fleet. World War II. Lee's specialty in life was gunnery. At the age of 19 in 1907, he became the only American to win both the U.S. National High-Power Rifle and Pistol Championships in the same year. In 1914, during the Veracruz campaign in Mexico, he drew the fire of 3 enemy snipers, thereby exposing their positions and then shot them at long range. He understood the powerful guns of a battleship as an extension of the law of ballistics and adapted his expertise to the new age of technology. When Admiral Lee engaged the Japanese Vice Admiral Nobutake Kondo's battleship Kirishima on the evening of November 14, 1942, in the waters off Guadalcanal, he became naval history's first battleship commander to conduct a gunfight primarily by radar remote control. Naval Battle of Guadalcanal. In August 1942, Rear Admiral Lee was sent to the Pacific to command Battleship Division 6, consisting of the battleships Washington and South Dakota. Flying his flag in Washington, Lee engaged an Imperial Japanese Navy surface fleet under the command of Vice Admiral Kondo during the second night of the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal on the night of November 14–15, 1942. While riding in the battleship Washington, which served as his flagship during this sea fight, Lee's battleship decisively shelled the battleship Kirishima into a wreck, resulting in her scuttling shortly afterwards. She sank into Iron Bottom Sound with 300 Imperial Japanese Navy sailors still aboard, leaving Admiral Lee's flagship Washington, the only American battleship during World War II, to sink an enemy battleship in a one-on-one gunfight. Lee, who knew more about radar than the radar operators, used the SG radar installed aboard Washington to skillfully maneuver his ships during the night. To Willis Lee went many accolades. "Audacious planning and execution marked his operations," commented Halsey. Unlike Callahan, Lee never allowed the action to degenerate into a nautical brawl because he formulated a workable plan and adhered to it, even after every ship in his task force except Washington was sunk or forced to retire. Lee was never more incisive than in his own evaluation of his success. "We realized then, and it should not be forgotten now, that our entire superiority was due almost entirely to our possession of radar. Certainly we have no edge on the Japs in experience, skill, training, or performance of personnel." After Guadalcanal, Lee was awarded the Navy Cross for his actions at the battle, promoted to Vice Admiral in 1944, and placed in charge of the Pacific Fleet's fast battleships as Commander, Battleships, Pacific Fleet, Combat Pack. In May 1945, he was sent to the Atlantic to command a special unit researching defenses against the threat of Japanese kamikaze aircraft, the Composite Task Force, U.S. Atlantic Fleet. While serving in that position on August 25, 1945, Vice Admiral Lee died suddenly after suffering a heart attack, 10 days after the surrender of Japan. He collapsed and died in a motor launch that was ferrying him out to his flagship, the gunnery training ship USS Wyoming, AG-17, in the harbor of Portland, Maine. Lee was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Family. Willis Lee Jr. was a distant relative of Confederate General Robert E. Lee and the third Attorney General of the United States, Charles Lee. He married Mabel Allen Elspeth, 1894-1949, on July 14, 1919. They had no children. Willis's father, Judge Willis Augustus Lee Sr., was one of 14 children of Nathaniel Wiley Lee, aka Nat Lee, founder of Nat Lee, Kentucky, and Francis Abbott of Owen County, Kentucky. While in the Pacific Theater, Lee unofficially adopted 2 Korean children in Vietnam after the children's family requested that Lee take the children to the United States. His great-grandparents were early Kentucky settlers, Joseph R. Lee and Mary Wiley. His grandfather, Nathaniel W. Lee, operated a distillery at his namesake village of Natley. In 1893, Nat Lee's Sour Mash whiskey was taken to the Chicago World's Fair, where it won the gold medal over 5,000 other entries. That's the complete article. If you made it this far, you'll love the rest of the channel. Subscribe for a new Wikipedia deep dive every single day. The next video is on screen now, and if there's a topic you want narrated, drop it in the comments. Thanks for watching.